And just remember the love, because when I speak to somebody who's got a bit of racism, I got called the N-word not long ago. I didn't walk away and spitting and carrying on. I had a chat with him. You know, the next day we were at a hotel, and the next day the same guy, he wasn't a friend, he was a stranger, but the next day he saw me in the lobby, and he was with his wife, who he wasn't with that night. And he saw me and he stopped me and he said, he didn't even know my name, nothing about me. And he said, "Can I shake your hand?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I want to say I am sincerely sorry for using such a rude word in your company or in anyone's company." And he said, "The way that you dealt with it and the way you spoke to me and the way that we discussed what you had to say," he said, "I've got nothing but absolute and utmost respect for you. Thank you." And I said to him, if you take anything away from that, please remember that next time you feel resentful or inspired by others to hate, remember this conversation, please. Wow. So this thing came on, I just looked at it and I was like, I'm not opening that for a day or two. I just left it. And I was like, I've got to open it. And that day, Guy phones up and says, "Come down to the studio, I want you to jam for Robbie Williams band." And I was like, okay.
Okay, I'll leave the envelope.
I never opened it. I just chucked it straight in the bin.
Yeah.
We just had a jam with the band. Rob wasn't even there. I didn't meet Rob until we were about to go on to a rooftop gig in Germany. So it was one of those situations, and I met him in the hotel lobby and he said, "Hello, my name is Robbie Williams. I believe you're my new bass player." Kind of Alan Partridge-esque. Yeah, it was quite funny. I was like, "I believe I am." He said, "I'll see you up there." And I went, "See you up there." And it was really strange.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. After Paul being so hands-on, and so just like the person that phones you and talks through the set with you and just fine-tunes things, Rob was just turn up and play kind of guy, you know. And Guy Chambers was the person that MD'd the band and made sure everything sounded great. Yeah,
awesome. And let's just jump straight now to Hans Zimmer. What an amazing gig. And it's kind of, after everything you've done and still doing, to then have that, obviously not right now because we're all in the same position, but it's like up to, and then presumably once we're all allowed to be run around again, to have that, because it's such a lovely level of, it's almost, I don't know what the next word. It's like he is a musical legacy.
Yes.
Isn't he? To have, but it's not rock. It's not, I've got the call to go and play with The Who or something. It's like, this is different.
Yeah,
so exactly. How did that come about?
Well, I have to go back a few years, in fact. I can't do the jump because I played plans in 2014. But I actually, from my Robbie days, I became good friends with Chris Sharrock, the drummer, who I adore. He's just the best guy. And he asked me, he was on a session for Dave Stewart, and Dave Stewart asked him, "What bass player should we get in?" And Chris was like, "You've got to get Yolanda." So there I was, and the session was for the soundtrack for this remake of Alfie.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that one that kind of flopped, actually.
Yeah, but hey.
But, I've got him, oh my God, I can't remember the actor, how awful. Jude Law. The most wondrously handsome Jude Law.
And he went to school with Steve White. They were in the same class.
Oh, right. I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh, there you go, right? So, Jude Law came into the session, right? I have to tell you this. I was doing, because it's a film session, we weren't live, right? Because it wasn't a big orchestra, but we were just doing the kind of overdub style pop stuff for it. And there was a scene they wanted bass on, not the rest of the band, just the bass on. Okay. A lot of it was pre-recorded already, and I was just in the actual live room because that's where the monitors were all set up. Jude Law's in on the session because we were in for a week. He's in that day, and this scene was Jude Law and Susan Sarandon doing their lovemaking scene, and Jude Law was in the live room with me while I was trying to put bass down on that. Just saying.
Brilliant. Oh my God.
I think I was a bit blushy, actually. I think I actually felt a little bit embarrassed. You know, a woman, already mother of, I think I was a mother of 3, no, not yet, but I was a mother of 2 at that point. I found myself blushing, you know, because I must admit it was a little bit, you know, can you imagine?
Yeah, it's a quite strange position to be in.
He was in a strange position. Anyway, it was a polite, family-friendly movie, so needless to say, it wasn't too difficult, but it was tricky. But so I met Dave Stewart, and I became friends. And he said, you know, who are you? What are you about? I then said, well, I make my own music, and I gave him a copy of a record that I'd made in 2002. We were in the studio for a week, and you know, that week was Mick Jagger and Dave Stewart did the soundtrack. So I met Mick Jagger as well, sitting on the sofa with him, chatting away about this and that. And he showed me pictures of his grandchildren, you know, it's like really, really normal stuff. It was just so lovely. He was just great. But then when I gave this copy of my album to Dave Stewart, he came back and gave me a full rundown of where he thought most of the tracks had influenced by Bill.
Wow.
Yeah, he just actually really listened. And I was so impressed with his, not only that he understood where my music was coming from, because I didn't necessarily know he was a fan of all the artists that I was inspired by. And it wasn't a deliberate copying, it's just that they just happened to be in there. And he just basically said, you know, that's really great. You're not just a bass player, are you? And I was like, I guess not. He said, you're a producer and a songwriter.
Wicked.
And I was like, oh yeah.
I am, yeah. Look what I wrote it and produced it. Here it is.
I didn't even think like that. I just feel like a bass player, like through and through, you know. So then when it came to him actually wanting to put a band together in the UK, because he'd just moved at that point to LA, he called me and he said, I need musicians and I want an MD. Will you be my MD and get me a band? And so I ended up working for Dave Stewart as his MD in his UK incarnation, which was amazing to be asked. Yeah. And that without going into it too much, you know, the tour that he had booked and everything fell through, and it was just a really disappointing situation. But we did have a lovely moment where we met. I met through him. I met Hans Zimmer. He asked me to, in fact, let's get my timeline right. Okay, so we did a charity show, one-off with Dave Stewart, and Hans came up and did a song. And I was the MD, and when we started the song, and it was a live streamed thing, so no redos, they just put a guitar on Hans's body and then counted it off, and he just stood there, I think, looking at me, and I could see in his face, he's like, what key are we going to play in? What's the first chord? I just went to him, F. 3, 4, F, you know. Yeah. So luckily I'd been noticing, you know, you can be a bit sleepy, you know, sometimes, but as MD you have to be this sentinel and just be watching everything all the time. So Hans was really happy with me. He was just like, oh, you saved my bacon, you know, and all of this. And I was like, oh, that's okay, it was a small thing. But he never forgot, right? So then when he was ready to do, then Dave asked for a bass player for a Madagascar 3, I think it was.
Right, okay.
Just a pre-production kind of session. It wasn't going to make the actual film. We just got together. Dave asked me to come in. I met Hans properly. And then we did a week again in the studio together, just working on the soundtrack, coming up with ideas. In the end, I don't think they used any of it. It literally was just a throw it at the wall session. You know, Sheila E. was in there.
Right, oh,
you know.
cool.
It was quite something. In fact, while we were working on that, Hans was getting people, you know, files sent to him from Sherlock Holmes, you know, while we were working on Madagascar 3. I could see his life was just this crazy bombardment of constant creativity, you know, from everywhere. And then a couple of years later, he asked me to be part of his live music experiment, he called it, which was 2 shows at Hammersmith Apollo, Hammersmith Eventime, I think it's called, isn't it?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. And that was really scary. Yeah. That was, now I was just like, wow, okay, this is out of my comfort zone completely. I had a wodge of music to learn. I had no pointers. The MD was mostly concentrating on orchestral part.
Of course, yeah. They
had electric bass, electric guitar, Guthrie Governs and the guitar on that. Okay. Popular, you know, those kind of more rock and roll kind of style instruments were part of this ensemble, but we didn't have much guidance from the actual original soundtrack because there wasn't any electric bass on most of it. Yeah. So I ended up having to work through what they gave me, which was orchestral parts. I mean, gosh, the early Inception part was 6 or 7 pages of the chord changes of just 16th notes.
Wow.
From start to finish.
Okay.
And I was just like, and the tempo is quite pacey. I was just like, I don't know if I can play that.
Yeah, of course.
It's really fast.
Yeah.
And also, it was written in the wrong register for bass. It was just, you wouldn't want to play that up there. And if you played it down below, it would be very dominating.
Yeah.
I was just like, what are we going to do with this? You know, so I remember we went into rehearsals and I started playing it. And Hans stopped me and he went, "What are you playing?" And I said, "What's written?" You know, he said, "Oh, rip that up, play something else." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh, perfect.
And then another one was Sherlock Holmes. I was playing through the written part, and he went, "Oh, can you jazz it up a bit? Can you do something?" I was like, "What? What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, you know," he said, "there's a video of you on YouTube. I saw it, and I remembered you obviously from our working together. But when I saw that video, I hadn't seen you slap bass before." And he said, "I really liked what you were doing on that video." And I went, "What? You want to slap bass?" And he said, "Yeah, why not?" And I said, "What? Are you sure?" I said, "Tastefully, tastefully." And he went, "If you can do it tastefully, I want the verve, the feeling that came across on that video," which is a key thing to say to people. Be yourself. Put who you are online. If you're going to do something, don't just do covers. Don't show off that you can play fast riffs. Put you online, because that's who you're going to get booked to be.
Yes.
If you get booked from it, not because you can play what everyone else can play.
Yeah.
Play what you do. So I was doing what I did on my little video, and Hans, I'd already got a gig, but he still said, "I want that." So there I was trying to work out how to slap Sherlock Holmes riff. And I did. I worked it out, and I thought, "What do you think of this?" And he went, "Yep, I like that." And then, funnily enough, when we came to do Wonder Woman, Superman kind of hybrid, or whatever you call it, I forgot the word for it, segue, I suppose. Yeah. There's just he said, "I want you to play the melody," and I just thought, well, that sounds, I don't know. I said, "Could you maybe electric guitar and cello would be better on that, because it's really waily." I said, "I'll tell you what, I'm just going to play a sort of syncopated rhythm." So I ended up playing, which is in 7. So I ended up playing this slap riff in 7, you know. And I said, I was like, yeah, more of that. So on the actual show,
brilliant.
We go into this segue from Superman into Wonder Woman, and I come out my little perch, and I start it off with this 7/8 slap riff, walking across the stage, with all these strobes going off and all the rest of it. And that was what Hans allows you to do in his space. Be creative, but you've got to have that creativity to input.
Yeah.
In the first place, but he allows space for it, which is beautiful.
Which is and I was going to say, which is amazing, because most people would think of that if they know music, and also I think people who don't really know music, who have gone to see that, they think this is all scripted. You know, everyone's just reading it. Not. He said to you, "No, do that thing that you do. You know, I saw you do that. Can you do that?" And it's not written down, so you put yourself into it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Again, it's all those experiences you'd had in the past of being put into those situations, even before Jimmy Sommerville, where you're just saying yes to everything.
Yes.
And it's that almost like staring over the edge of a cliff going, "Well, I believe in myself, it's going to be fine."
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, you've got Hans Zimmer saying, you know, "Well, just play something," you know, and you go, "I've got something in 7/8, I think that might be cool."
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was that balance of, you know, tracks like The Dark Knight, 20 minutes long or so. That I play that faithfully, bar by bar, exactly as written. And some of it I memorised, but that one's hard to memorise because the subtle changes, like some bars are very similar but just a little different, so it's hard to memorise in full. But yeah, I'm reading that the whole time, so I'm sort of there concentrating like that. And then it's so nice to have moments like in The Lion King where I'm using the influence from the record, but I'm playing my own thing. And he loves it because I really sort of milk the triplet element to it. I milk the delayed, laid-back stuff on that one. And then, you know, that Wonder Woman, I can slap that. So there's a nice balance of very, very sort of rigid players-written stuff and then more improvised. Not improvised, but come up with on my own stuff.
Yeah.
That I will play the same every night. I don't change it once it's done, but at least I came up with that. So I feel like my creativity's been used.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. No, that's awesome. And then I read something this morning. It was online somewhere where you're saying when you got asked to do the squeeze thing, you put on your Paul Weller hat.
Yes.
And I thought that was a really interesting, because obviously again that's completely different.
Yeah.
That's not acid funk, and it's not Hans Zimmer.
Yeah.
So I love the fact you said you put on your Paul Weller hat. So what did you mean by that? I mean, I know what you mean by that, but just for everyone watching.
Excellent, yeah, I got you. Well, because, you know, like I reference music according to artists, you know, albums that I know, and it helps me to shape my sound, because touch and tone is such an important part of what you do to make something work. Not all of your approaches are going to work for all genres. You've got to adjust. And that, I mean, that also, because of tone being kind of influenced massively with instruments and amp settings and things like that. So I'm going to adjust my amp. I'm going to choose a particular bass, and I'm going to then have a particular mental attitude about what kind of fills I should play, what technique to use. Like I wouldn't use slap, for instance, potentially. Things like that. So that's what the Paul Weller hat would be. What worked in that music really well was very melodic style of bass playing, whilst leaving a lot of space for vocals, using a bass that didn't have too many sort of overtones, so you therefore wouldn't use an active bass, you know, and then mentally having a kind of approach of, it's someone else's music, it's someone else's band, it's their baby, make them happy, you know, find their happy place. And so as a session player, I really want to do that for anyone that books me. So I turned up with my 64 Jazz, 65, I think 65 actually, my Ducky Blue Jazz, which I love. I don't take out on the road anymore. But I also turned up with my Fender American Pro, the passive bass, and it's a jazz version. I don't really get on so well with P basses. Yeah,
the necks are too
not quite suiting to my hands. I don't make a good sound on a P bass. I make a better sound on a jazz, I find. So I turned up with my 5-string, just, you know, being a bit cheeky. I just got it and I loved it, and I thought, well, you never know. And it was passive, so I knew I could, you know, get away with it. And Glenn loved the sound of the 5-string, so I used that for the whole album. And but what was surprising, although I turned up mentally thinking I need the Paul Weller approach, I thought, you know, maybe slightly less muso, a bit more bluesy, I didn't really know Squeeze's back catalogue, because they've got a lot of albums.
Got a lot of music.
A lot of music, and not too much for me to have absorbed, because, you know, I've got very eclectic tastes, but I've only got a certain amount of time to listen to it all. Yeah. And I realised that Glenn is a proper closet muso.
Oh,
which
really?
I didn't know. And there's fretless bass on the records. There's a bit of slap. There's even slap on Call for Cats. You know? I
was going to say that was the only one I could think that had any slap on it.
Yeah, which some people might actually not realise. You know, it was actually slap. So yeah, I realised that I had a lot more room than I thought I had to be me, and I definitely put in that kind of 60s Andy Fraser kind of bass guitar style into the room, but I was able to add the more sort of finesse kind of vibrato that you might have found more in 80s records, but without playing fretless, because I didn't even own a fretless at that point. And I got away with the 5-string, but I knew not to use too many notes below E, because I just thought they're going to be, you can't overdo it. They've got to be choice moments, man. Just thwack them with a nice low D. I even got away with a low C on one of the singles, you know, and I didn't get the frown. So I was like, okay,
I'm cool with this, but I ain't going down to B. That was
I never played a single B. And it was really great, because I had that 5-string. There was tunes from albums that they did in the 80s that we were then able to do, like Wicked and Cruel. That has a low D in it. You need that low D. They added that into the set because they had a versatile bass player, you know, so that was useful for them. But yeah, it was really interesting to see that I'd underestimated that situation and realised that there was a lot more space to be creative and be who I am. I still worked within their boundaries, and that's where taste comes in. You have to understand when and what's going to work.
Yeah, well, that's, I mean, that kind of sums up why people call people back as well, or why the reputation becomes what it is. Because obviously, as we said, there's loads of people can play, but a lot of people who can play really well don't listen. And it's the people who listen and want to put themselves into it, but within the right capacity to make the person who's paying for it really happy.
Yeah. It's their baby. And now actually, because I've had my own music, I really respect it, because I really feel it as a painful thing when I feel somebody's nonchalance or disregard or just treating my job working for me as something that's not important to them. They haven't paid attention to detail. They didn't learn the stuff. They've changed the chord voicings to the point where it doesn't sound with the same feeling that it had on the record and that stuff. I notice stuff like that, and I notice musicians who put attention into it, because that's what I do. And I do it on every level. I don't do it just when I'm working for big artists. I do it when I'm playing in clubs to 40 people. I want the feeling to be there, and to get that feeling, you've got to listen and pay attention to detail. So, you know, I do the same for artists at every point in my engagements, and I feel that they understand that I'm really caring about what I do for them, you know.
Yeah, exactly, which then makes the whole social thing a lot easier, isn't it? Because you need to be able to get on with people. You know, otherwise it's no fun. You know?
Exactly. It's funny, actually, I've just quit drinking not long. I'm close to my 3-month mark.
Right, well, congratulations.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of myself, because our job involves so much socialising, so much partying, so much afterwards, so much Dutch courage, you know, if you get a bit nervous. I found myself like being in a situation where I was so used to being in an alcohol sort of situation, with either having just drunk something or just come off stage and I'm drinking something. I was just thinking, you know what, I want to just see what life's like, just completely sober. And I've noticed massive changes, really great ones. So I'm going to stick with that for a while. I think that's really good. But the socialising side of things can lead you a little bit down the dark path. I'm lucky I steered clear of all of that. I've never been someone into drugs and stuff like that, but I've been around a lot of it. And I do feel that that's something you have to also pay attention to. If you really love music and you really want to do what you do that for a career, stay focused about why you're there. It's not for partying 24/7. No. It's for, you know, loving what you do and doing a good job, really. You know?
I mean, the high should be on stage, not after it. You know? You know? Or, you know, at that moment in the studio where that's just been put down, you listen back to it and you go, But of course, then a lot of people then take that excitement and put it in a line on a table or in a bottle, and, you know, and then before you know it, that can take over the care and integrity for the music in the first place, which is what got you there, to experience that high, to then want to replicate it. So and it's not going to be the same sort of high as the joy of connecting with musicians and connecting with the music. I mean, that buzz is replicable, but buzzes from alcohol are subject to all sorts of things, and they don't tend to be a true feeling. But the feeling, that emotion, you felt that. You've been moved to tears when you've been on stage, like through just sheer joy and just like everything. Oh my God! I know.
It's so wonderful.
Which is one of the reasons why we do it as well, and still do it. Is that it's almost like being hit by lightning, but in a nice way. You know, it's just like... Exactly.
It's one of the things that I'm most mournful about this whole lockdown is just I miss that relationship between an audience and the music and the performing to and receiving from, because we receive energy from an audience. It's not applause, it's something else. And you know, we can do lockdown sessions, we can, you know, do stuff that's online and they can absorb it and we can get paid. And so some of us would be okay, we'll manage to make a living, but we need that in-person experience. We really do. And I'm really looking forward to being able to do that with people who are confident enough to congregate and to allow, not because our careers need money coming in, but because of the joy of sharing what we do with people in person. You know, that's a massively important service that we provide. Well, entertainment isn't a frivolous thing. No. Entertainment is a difference between getting up, going to work to pay bills so that you can survive, so that you can eat, so that you can, you know, do things. Maybe you'll get a holiday 2 weeks or 4 weeks of the year, but then you're back at work again. In between all those kind of things that are predictable, you've got concerts, laughing, dancing,
Yeah.
joy,
Yeah.
and all of that comes from entertainment.
Yeah.
And at the moment, entertainment is on the shelf indefinitely, and I know we need to get that back soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I've found since, because obviously all that session's been cancelled and you're not doing that show, and so I've been listening to a lot more music.
Yes.
Because I still need it. So instead of actually going and doing it, and obviously I sit and play on the piano and occasionally pick up the bass, but I tend to only do that if I'm doing it for something.
Yes,
You know,
that's right. That's
yeah,
right.
I don't
Learning other people's stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But I've found I've been listening to loads of music, going back to stuff that I knew. For instance, you mentioned Goodbye Pork Pie Hat.
Beautiful.
Listen to that on vinyl. Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then you just go, I need to play. I cannot wait to get back on stage.
Yeah.
It's that, as you said, the energy that goes backwards and forwards. Astonishing. Yeah.
You know, I had one experience when we was with Robbie at Nebworth, live at Nebworth. That was such a huge audience, you know. I'm sure other people have seen this, but Robert at that time had such a command over his audience. Really did. And it was a really good thing to see, real skill, actually. Despite criticisms of him and elsewhere, I think he's an amazing performer. And I remember that a feeling of seeing a visual representation of how sound travels.
Right, yes.
And that was that he said, everybody raise your hands, and it starts at the front, and they all hear it. When they hear it, and the timeline is slightly delayed, and you see the hands go up in a wave form. And it's a physical representation of when people hear things. And it literally is like, it was such a beautiful thing to see, because the audience was at over 100,000 people, and very, very deep, you know, as opposed to wide. So you could really see the reactions to the things he was saying traveling through the audience. And then that energy of that many people focused on one thing, whether it's singing a lyric or, you know, when you've done those big gigs, you don't really get those from the smaller gigs. That's a different feeling. I prefer smaller gigs. But those big gigs give you, you know, all the hairs stand up on your body. You know, you really feel the power of the collective, you know, at that point. It's incredible. Yeah,
it's the expansiveness of it, isn't it? It's like, as opposed to like the fine details of a small show.
Yeah.
It's just the scale.
Yes.
It actually becomes abstract as well after a while. You know, you're like, it's like the sea of baked beans. But when you see that thing of the wave form travelling away from you, that is really cool. Wow.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So many highlights, you know.
Oh, yeah, amazing. So apart from the continual, well, you get it less so now, hopefully, but the continual, can I have a female bass player? Now it's like, Yolanda, are you free? Because obviously now they know who you are. Is there anything in the sort of day-to-day thing, obviously apart from lockdown, about being a musician and songwriter and producer, let's put that in there, and occasional educator as well, that really wears you down about the music industry?
I feel that it's less, the music industry is you know, business, add business to art, and the artists haven't got time for business, so the business has to do the work that artists should be doing, but hasn't got time for, but they do it without consideration for the art sometimes. So the business side has got an agenda of sales and profits and things like, and survival. The artist's got an agenda of creativity and fulfillment and other things, and the two things don't always go together well. So that's a clash that I have to accept, and I can't really criticise because I understand it. I just would love if people who maybe retired from performing stayed in the business and then became business, because then hopefully they could carry on with the right kind of emphasis. You know, we don't all, once you get to, you know, my age or older, maybe you're not so keen on the whole performance year after year, and you can then use your skills to help the artists that don't have time for business and retain the integrity of the art. But actually my main kind of bugbear is, it's a kind of moan, and I don't really want to sort of blame anyone for this sort of thing, but I really feel that we're underappreciated.
Yeah.
I feel what we do, the service we provide, the essential qualities that we add to the everyday experience of living in this world is underappreciated, maybe in this country, maybe in the Western world, more so, apart from Ireland, I have to say. Because, boy, when you go to you feel that they understand how important music is, you know. I feel that it's like, if there's a pecking order of distasteful jobs, you know, I'm a rock musician, you know, it's kind of close to estate agents, isn't it? It's like, we have, it's that whole thing, you know, get a real job, that attitude. Yeah. And I hear that from people when they don't really mean it. I know they don't mean it, because if you then pick, you know, the argument apart, you realise that they will have songs that their kid was born to, that is their song with their love of their life. They've got a song they want played at their funeral. Yeah. They've got music, they love music. It's so important to them, you know, in every stage of their lives. There's this meaningful kind of element. But then when they kind of talk about musicians, there's this disparaging kind of opinion of us, and we're treated like there's no respect for us in some forms. Yeah. I just find that bizarre. Yeah. I think the messaging is odd. It might be media driven, I don't know. But I do feel that I would love it if more people actually played musical instruments, the way that in some cultures it's just normal to do so. I think there would be an appreciation if we could do that singing around the piano thing more, like in pubs back in the day, which now people don't do. It's just, you know, TV, sports TV or jukeboxes. It's a shame that people don't love all of it, and they only kind of appreciate the bit that they kind of notice, because it affects how we get treated by the tax officials, by banks. You know, they treat us like this lesser thing, and it filters down through society, when really, if you did just talk about it with them, they would realise how much they actually love the fact that you do what you do, because it allows them to celebrate and love life more. And I actually use this term, this kind of conversation to discuss racism also, that, you know, when somebody says something to do with my skin colour or some part of the world they don't approve somebody coming from because of conflict or potential worries about terrorism or whatever their fears are, you know, let's not go there, but I just wanted to say to them, if you hate brown people so much, go to your record collection and take out every record that's got an influence, comes from or played by a brown person, and you may have very little left in your record collection. You love us, you just don't realise you do.
Good, you love us. Perfect, exactly. I love that. What would they be left with?
Exactly.
Fuck all.
Well, really, I mean, we're talking about modern pop and rock and roll.
I know.
We know where that comes from, don't we? Yeah. You know, I mean, that comes from America and African influence, and, you know, the spirituals, gospel, you know, the whole thing, you know. And yeah, of course, the slavery side of things, that awful part of human history, something beautiful came from it. Like every suffering part of humanity's experience, something beautiful can come from these things. And one of the beautiful things that came from slavery in America was the adaptation of the Africans into that culture, and they made something beautiful within that, even under those awful suffering. Look what they gave us. You know what I mean? I'm not grateful for slavery, you know, but what I am grateful for is the beauty that comes out of suffering. And you know what that's like? It's a sort of spiritual thing. It's like the lotus flower, right? The lotus flower grows in horrible moss swamp-like conditions that is probably smelly and not very nice and attractive to look at. But what grows out of it is this beautiful flower that's pure. You know? And I just have to say that we need to respect each other more, you know, and forget about the politics of things and the way that people try and turn our attention to detail that, you know, supports their personal agenda for controlling. Totally. And just remember the love, because when I speak to somebody who's got a bit of racism, I got called the N-word not long ago. I didn't walk away and spitting and carrying on. I had a chat with him. you know, the next day we were at a hotel, and the next day the same guy, he wasn't a friend, he was a stranger, but the next day he saw me in the lobby, and he was with his wife, who he wasn't with that night. And he saw me and he stopped me and he said, he didn't even know my name, knew nothing about me. And he said, "Can I shake your hand?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I want to say I am sincerely sorry for using such a rude word in your company or in anyone's company." And he said, "The way that you dealt with it and the way you spoke to me and the way that we discussed what you had to say," he said, "I've got nothing but absolute and utmost respect for you. Thank you." And I said to him, if you take anything away from that, please remember that next time you feel resentful or inspired by others to hate, remember this conversation, please. Wow. And I don't know, I'm so sorry about the bang. I don't know what, you know, legacy that's going to leave for him, but all I know is that when I was dealing with that guy, he wasn't actually physically threatening me, because that takes a different reaction, right? Yeah. Run, get the police. Yeah. You know, I would just say I didn't see him as a non-human because I didn't like what he was saying. And that's what I want back in return. Don't see me as a non-human because you don't like what I'm saying or because you don't like the way I look. I'm still human. Yeah. Just like he is still human despite coming out with some horrible rhetoric. Still treated him like a human being. And then I brought back, I felt, or he found his humanity again. And then we were able to shake hands, and it meant a lot to me. Yeah, no, I mean, that is what a lot of what you said there is that human interaction right there. So what he said was despicable. Your reaction was not anger in the way he'd expect or want to provoke, possibly. I think, Is that because you were incredibly reasonable and articulate in what his bullshit has then made him think as a human being to another human being about his complete inadequacy and erroneous nature, and then respond again with human. But that's what we've kind of lost with the Twitter warriors, is because it's so easy to dehumanize. You know, oh, blah 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 blah, send it off, because they're not there. You know. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Just sprung that on you a bit there. No, it's good. But I love your quote. To any of them, take all your records out because you love us. That's magic, that is. That was magic. All right, so I'm going to ask you one more question. Yes. This is a difficult one, and everyone squirms, but only for about 30 seconds, and then they think of how to answer it. Okay. Can you pick 3 recordings you've done just that was for any reason whatsoever that stand out to you? Yes, I did a Van Morrison and B.B. King recording of Early in the Morning for B.B. King's 80th anniversary album. Wicked. And I was Pino Palladino's dep because he couldn't make it from New York or wherever he was at the time. So my name got put forward, which I was very proud about. And I really liked the way I played on that. And I was proud of it as well because Van Morrison put it on. He used that same recording for one of his own releases as well. Wicked. So it made it on 2 releases, which is great. I just felt it signified a lot to me. It was very high pressured. It was live. There was Eric Clapton, Van Morrison, B.B. King and Roger Daltry all there. And it was, there's a lot of people hanging about in the control room. I was the only girl in the building, probably. And I was a dep as well. So I didn't have that reputation being known. And so, it was significant. That was lovely. My first vocal album, which was with that band, the Deep Mo. The whole thing, really. I mean, I won't do it again. It was me singing vocals, and I wrote the whole thing. I also produced it. I edited most of the performances. I did it at home. I had a beautiful, wonderful engineer called Daryl who did all of the tech stuff and the EQ and the mixing and everything. And so, you know, most of that album, that is pretty much me. Back then, that's a snapshot of me then. And I'm really, really proud of it, because it was the one time that I'll ever do anything like that. Yeah, that's a big deal. A recording, gosh, the third one, not in order of importance, but I think You Do Something to Me. played on Stanley Road. I left Paul's band after recording that song, I think. I just basically quit. I was like, right, I've done my track, I'm off. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, I'm not coming back. And he was like, why? I said, oh, you know why, we don't get on. And he said, oh, I think we're too similar, too much alike. And I was like, yeah, right.
Yeah, in your dreams, you loon.
You're the pop star, and I'm just this little girl bass player, and we're equals. Oh, no, we're not. I couldn't handle the pressure working with Paul by that point. And so I left at a point where I could have finished the whole Stanley Road album, and I didn't, because I was so adamant I had to leave. And I fulfilled my commitment, which was to record up to the last day of that particular booking. Once I got that bass track down, I was like, see ya. Yeah. Which in a way I regret, because I wish I'd finished the album and then run off, but still, anyway. But You Do Something to Me, I did record that, and it made it on the record. And it's one of those songs that, it's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
I love his voice anyway, but on that record particularly. And it's one of those songs, the recording, that when I'm with musicians, right, any random musicians anywhere in the world, pretty much strangely actually, because he's not as massively known across the board. Yeah. But if I tell people that I played the bass on that track, I just get this level of hero worship. Yeah. It's just so nice. People love that song. They really like the bass playing on it. Yeah. And
it's ace.
I'm proud of it, really proud of it.
Yeah. And it's such a simple song as well.
It is.
Isn't it? But as you said, it's that thing of, going back to what we were saying a lot earlier, was like that listening to what you're doing and what's going on around you and leaving the space. But at that moment to just go to the 5 in the octave and then to go back down low, because it just creates that. And then the right push where Steve did, you know, when Whitey does his little extra push thing, and it's to go with that and all those little bits.
Yeah.
Which is simple, but if people missed it, if someone else was doing it and they hadn't paid attention or they weren't listening, the feeling falls to pieces, doesn't it? You know. Exactly,
and you know, we'd already been touring Wildwood, you know, so we were a band by this point, so we were ready to make a record in terms of our familiarity with each other's playing, all of that stuff. So it was key to making it sound as solid and expressive. And you know, this little conversation needs to happen when you've been on the road for that long, you know, by that point, because the communication's already established. So it was a nice point to go in and start recording, but it was a difficult period, you know, at that point in Paul's life especially. And I didn't have the gumption to hang on board for that. I mean, he got over all of that period very well, and he made beautiful records afterwards, and Heavy Soul, when that came out, I was booked again to promote that record, which I was happy to do. I missed recording it, which is like, as the kind of regrets you might have.
Yeah.
But I did go back, so whatever had happened then, we got over that, and I did another year in '97, I think it was. But yeah, it was. It's great, because when I listened to it, I remember being at the Manor. I remember doing the Phoenix Festival. You know, I remember so much of my life, and we're lucky we have these snapshot moments, don't we? Yeah. That are sort of pinpointed by musical experiences that we've, you know, been part of, and then you hear from fans of Paul's or whoever who had those moments as landmark moments too, but from a different perspective. And it's really lovely because it's a shared thing, but it's unique as well, you know.
Magic. So, also, I'm just going to throw one in, because we're going to put links to all 3 tracks you've mentioned.
Okay.
Just so, because one of the subtext to all of this is for people to engage with the music and everything that we do.
Well, my stuff's on SoundCloud, so they can just consume that for free. It's fine.
Okay, but we'll put the link on there and everything. But I'm going to throw one in, which is the Talbot White album, Off the Beaten Track.
Yes.
That was such a great record.
It is. I know. Mick. I love Mick.
Yeah.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved working with those two. It was great, actually.
Yeah, such a great record. And there was a remix. I can't remember the names of any of the tracks. I'll have to try and remember it. Max Hayes did a remix.
Max.
So he did. I think he just took pieces of the song and reconstructed it. But what he took from what you were playing and what Whitey was playing.
Yeah.
And he looped it up. Oh my God, it's incredible.
Oh, I haven't ever heard that.
I'll have to dig it out, and I'll send you a link to it, because it is so good.
Oh, what? Yeah, man. Yeah, Max is good. Yeah, I remember him being particularly a bit of a don when it came to all that stuff.
So
really
good.
good.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, brilliant. This has been fabulous.
Thank you. It was really nice chatting with you as well. Anyway, I would have been speaking to you about all of this stuff, but yeah, it's been really good. And I like delving into my own history because sometimes you forget how much stuff's in there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, it's amazing, and it's funny how things happen. Like, you know, you ended up being in a room with B.B. King, Van Morrison, Eric Clapton, Daltry.
Yeah.
And you think all from just loving the record collection from your two older siblings playing you this and hearing all this music, and then you think, oh, I love that.
Yeah.
To go from there to that, and then, and I'm also playing with Hans Zimmer, and it's like, hey.
You know, my next tour is with Sting, right?
Is it?
Yeah, I go. Well, I'm supposed to be out in May.
Oh my God.
I've signed a contract, man. I'm just like,
That is so cool.
So yeah, and I haven't played a note with him yet.
Yeah.
But I've been booked to replace Sting himself
on his own, with him there.
Yes. Can you? You see why I'm going to need this attention to detail still.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sweating.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? It's like when I did that Mojo Filters thing, and McCartney was there, and I'm playing the bass to Come Together, and he's sitting on the couch with him in Abbey Road. And I'm like, thank God I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
I've got to really make sure.
Yeah.
And then you end up doing your own little bits anyway. But you know, you get the feeling, as you were saying, not just the feel, the time, in terms of the feeling of that slide, why that's important.
Exactly. Once you capture that, it actually frees you, funny enough. Once you capture the feeling, then you know what you can afford to add or take out, because it won't change the feeling because you've already nailed that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why it's worth doing, because if you don't do that, then you do have to be a bit of a robot and just play it exactly like it is. But once you understand it, then you can, you've got room to mess about.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's a bit of a one. Playing comes.
I know, which is hilarious. But when when the Sting thing does start, can you make sure he brings that Telecaster bass he's got? Because that's the one that Leo Fender built. That is the prototype, first ever electric bass ever made.
That might be in a flipping case somewhere.
And Sting's got it. So if you can steal it.
Oh, I think I just might be able to get it under my coat.
Exactly. See ya.
Yeah. I know. I just what? No.
No, what do you mean?
Under my coat. No. He's lovely. He's really lovely, Sting. And I met him for a chat about this gig in December, and he was just so sweet. And I just thought, you know what? I think it's just going to be a really safe place for me as a musician and as a human being as well. He was really, really open, mega warm. And he's just been there, seen it all, done it all. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I love that. All the people that's booking me now, they're all over 60 and beyond, Yeah. And I'm like, that's okay. I'm going to be 50 this year. It's like, it's all right. It's the right sort of balance to not be working for young pop starlets. I don't want to do that anymore.
Certain gravitas.
Yeah, it's nice to be around people who are settled in themselves, and they're not, the egos are not like bursting forth, always ready to tear you down. Now it's just like, I know what I'm doing here on the planet. I'm just making great music, you know? Nice to be around people like that. It's great.
Brilliant. Well, Yolanda, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Big virtual round of applause from everybody watching and listening.